1 in 5 males in Australia is experiencing loneliness, and 1 in 6 females in Australia is experiencing loneliness. That makes 16% of our population here in Australia is experiencing loneliness of some description. Now, the fastest increasing demographic for loneliness is the 15 to 24-year-olds. 15 to 24-year-olds are feeling lonely. Millennials and Gen Zs are exhibiting the biggest state or epidemic of loneliness that there is out there. And this is not cool. In the United States, it's 1 in 3 people. 33% of the US population are reported to be experiencing loneliness. You know what's really scary is that these numbers are just the people who've come forward to say, I need help. It's way bigger than that. If they're the numbers, it actually really concerns me. Loneliness is terrible. The World Health Organization has now cited that being lonely, the feeling of lonely, impacts your health more than having 15 cigarettes a day. So this podcast, I'm diving deep on what we can do about the state of loneliness. Let's go. So what is loneliness? Is loneliness like a thing that should be here all the time? What is it? Loneliness is more than just a fleeting emotion. You can have moments of feeling alone, big difference. But when a state of loneliness hangs around, that starts really significantly impacting your health, and it can impact on lots of ways. So like I said, the World Health Organization is now saying that it's an epidemic, and it has the equivalent impact on your body as having 15 cigarettes a day. Now, it's not just about feeling sad or isolated, and we saw this increase so dramatically over the last 4 years because of the pandemic and people being isolated and that sense of uncertainty and things like that. And mental health issues are just on the increase at a crazy rate. However, what concerns me is not just the mental health, but how that state of mental health is impacting our physical health. And it's taking people off the planet way too early. We know when people are in the early stages of loneliness, literally our body will we go into that state of overwhelm, inflammation starts to increase, and we'll see things like, colds and flus will impact us more. We're more susceptible to them, and also will be impacted more. Immune system in general. Cardiovascular system, so heart, stress, all those kind of things are really impacted. We're seeing the rise in depression, anxiety, all of those kind of states at the moment are racing ahead. And what seems to be sitting behind it, the first kind of emotion that's coming with it, is loneliness. So like I say, we were disconnected so big over the last 4 years. However, that state of loneliness, in fact, it was back in 2002 that the UK put on a minister for loneliness. Japan followed suit. There's now 52 countries in the world who have either got a minister or they've got absolute kind of departments, including Australia. We don't have a minister, but we have a department to help tackle the problem, the ongoing and ever increasing problem of loneliness in the country. That's, for me as a practitioner, that's actually a scary thing. And we're seeing the more that people are connecting on things like online, which is what seems to have spurred the increase initially before the pandemic just simply amplified it in a big way. So the whole, everything from, people, and especially the young'uns, using social media so much seems to be where it's all stirred. And then there's that comparison and not feeling like they're fitting in. Plus just that lack of one-on-one. My generation, we were always physically kind of connected with people. So, and it doesn't really matter where it's come from or why someone's feeling it, but we need to start nipping it in the bud. And seeing these statistics, I'm writing my new book, not updating, I'm writing The 8th Step to Sanity, which is, the 7 steps that I wrote 22 years ago is still really relevant. However, now there's even more going on. So my new book, which will be out before Christmas, I was writing about that today, which is why I thought I need to do a podcast on it. So it's very much in my brain, and I'm even actively working to prevent that state. And loneliness is an emotion I've personally not experienced. I love being on my own. I'm happy to feel alone. I don't feel loneliness. It's just something I've not done. And I think, thanks to the universe for that's something I haven't had to deal with. However, we know a lot of people are. So I just wanted to touch on it. A couple of things that I'm doing to make sure I can come from a place of prevention, and working with some people to help them as well. because we know it's a vicious cycle. So when our mental health is being taxed by any emotion, loneliness, whatever, um, eating can go off track. When our eating's off track, our gut microbiome usually gets taxed. Our gut microbiome is really, our gut talks to our brain and helps us turn on our happy hormones, things like serotonin and dopamine. And so it's a real thing that we're wanting to break that loop where, we feel bad, we eat bad. What do we need to do? Where can we start? And I thought I'll just keep it really simple, because once you start going down that rabbit hole of something like loneliness, it can get pretty deep pretty quick. So we know over the last 4 years it got amplified because people were isolated, okay? And I understand it's a normal, and I like to do it too. So if you've got a lot going on, you just want to withdraw, and it's like that safety thing kicks in. I just want to just look after myself. And so it's a normal thing to want to disengage with society versus really actively engaging. And, I've got clients or friends whose, young teenagers haven't coped over the last 4 years and are in a very withdrawn state. It's huge. I just find this so huge. So the more we were isolated, it kind of went two ways. Some people withdrew even further, and other people like myself kind of rebelled and went, well, I'm going to throw myself more into life, because, I'm aware of that kind of self-perpetuating cycle of isolation that can happen. And when we're withdrawn for long enough, self-esteem, self-confidence, all those kind of things go down. And mine definitely took a knock. And it also took a knock because I wasn't engaged in my normal world of traveling around the world and speaking as a professional speaker. So I wasn't engaged in the same way, but I really mentally did things. And I think I've spoken on a podcast before about how early in 2020, when the initial lockdowns first happened, was probably about May 2020, something like that. And they had the beaches here on the Gold Coast were literally barricaded off. We weren't allowed to go surfing. You couldn't walk on the beach. You couldn't run on the beach. You couldn't do anything. And I went down the beach early in the morning, and a couple of the girls I'd normally surf with, it was like 4 a.m, winter, cold. And one of the girls in particular lived in Queensland and worked in New South Wales. So we're a border town, and that it was a hard border, security, gates, police everywhere, the whole thing. And it was really doing her brain in. One, she couldn't work because they hadn't opened it up for workers yet. And her normal way to manage stress, which was to go surfing, was taken away from her. And through that, me seeing the impact on her and me feeling, lost enough at the time too, I actively did that. We started a Zoom call on a Friday, and we said to everyone, look, come with a beer in your hand or a glass of wine or a cup of tea, whatever is your thing, and let's just sit and chat. So when we physically couldn't be together, I set a structure, which was part for my benefit as well, but set a structure so that we could stay actively engaged with people, just catch up, just defrag our brains and stay engaged. When things started opening up a bit, I personally went, wow, I need to do something with this. And so 3 of us gathered together, and we built a community of over 3,000 women who surf on the Gold Coast nowadays. And that's grown into a whole board riders club and everything, which has been amazing. But I'd been learning the ukulele while in isolation. And then I found a ukulele group. Now I can learn ukulele on my own. However, I thought I need to stay engaged with people. And I'm a lone wolf. So for me to engage is hard anyway. But I thought if I'm feeling, I'm losing my confidence and a bit of a sense of doom and gloom, definitely in the early days of it, until I pulled myself out of it. And things like really engaging in the community were ways that I was able to bring it back and bring my brain back. And so here I am a few years on. If I'm in the country and at home on the Gold Coast, Friday mornings, I commit my time to go and play ukulele with these guys because it absolutely helps my mental health in such a big way. And part of it is just that social connection, just being amongst them. And so, the digital age is not going to go away. And so we've got to find ways to stay connected. with its, whether it's, you know, I caught up with one of my mentors on the weekend, Mr. David T.S. Wood, and a few years ago, I was traveling so much. I was away a good 9+ months a year as a speaker, and I was bragging one day about how I didn't know my neighbors, that my people were all around the world. And he went, Jen, go and knock on your neighbors' doors. You need to get to, and he put the challenge out to me that I needed to hold a street party, and get to know my neighbors. And the deal was I wasn't allowed to just put a letterbox flyer, a flyer in their letterbox. I had to actually go and knock on the door, introduce myself, and invite them to my place. Well, I set the date for about a month in advance, made up the list of little flyers I could leave them the information with. And it was going to be just like a potluck. Everyone bring a plate to share food, and we just catch up. I decided to do it on a Saturday afternoon, started at 4 p.m., expecting that all leave by 7 p.m. And I thought, wow, if 2 or 3, people turn up, that'll be great. I knocked on the doors at 20 neighbors, 20 houses, and 12 out of the 20 houses turned up. 11 o'clock at night, I had to say, go home, I need to go to sleep. And it really surprised me. And when people would turn up, I literally ran this meetup because people no one knew each other. It was so interesting. Everyone's going, oh, I wish, wow, I've never known anyone in the street. And, I wish, someone had done this sooner and all that kind of stuff. It was interesting. I'd ran it like my event. So someone would walk in the door with a plate of food, and I'd go, hey, where are you from again? What house are you from? And they'd say, it's Courtney and Aaron from number 12. And I'd say, hey, everyone, this is Courtney and Aaron from number 12. And they'd all, yeah. And it just turned into this incredibly cool, fun, social thing. And we did it a couple of years running while I was living there. And that was great. So when I moved to this new house, the first thing, that first Christmas, Alice, my wife, and I, we did the same thing, pulled together a very basic street party so that we could meet our neighbors. And yeah, so it's a thing. There's ways to get engaged. Now, I am the lone wolf. In the past, I've not enjoyed playing with other people. My comfort zone is to just be a quiet little life by myself. I know people don't believe it because I'm so out and loud and everything in what you see in social media and stuff. However, I live like a recluse. I live in silence. That's my comfort zone. But I also know for my mental health, I need to not just do that. So I do things like this, but my mentors challenge me. And so I'm challenging you the same way as you listen to this podcast. It's time to get out and physically engage with people. And seeing these latest stats, when I was researching for my book, I went, well, I need to do more as well. I'm coming from a place of prevention, biohacking. As naturopaths, we say every little thing that we do today impacts our health long term. And I want to age strong, fit, and healthy. I want to age engaged. In the TV show, the Blue Zone that's been on Netflix recently in the last 6 months, it showed the common denominator for all the populations of centenarians that they looked at, places in the world where the maximum age is reached in a healthy way. So health span versus lifespan, which I've talked about in past podcasts. It was that sense of purpose. In Japan, they call it ikigai, and social connection. So people who are engaged in their community, whatever that community is, doesn't matter, live longer and live healthier than those who don't. That's big. It's big. So for me, I was thinking about it as I was writing here today. I thought, okay, yep, I've got my ukulele and I've got my surf group. I also volunteer with the Veterans Garden. I'm a veteran. And I thought, what else can I do? I thought, well, I've always wanted to learn how to dance. But I wanted to learn how to dance with my partner, with my wife. So, and I grew up watching my parents jive. I grew up in a rock and roll family, just epic music. And I always loved watching mum and dad dance. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to learn to dance. I'm going to find a place, within reasonable distance of our home for us to go and learn how to dance. So I'm really excited I only thought about that on the weekend when I was working on my book. So it's time for us to be proactive. The digital age is going to continue. That we've passed that tipping point. That all those The online connections, social media, all that kind of stuff is not going to change. There's still so many people working a hybrid workspace. So they're, maybe working a few days a week from home and a few days at work. So there's not that same connection in the workplace. So that's not going to change. And it's absolutely already shown in research that they create loneliness versus bring people together. So strategies to combat it. One, look at your health. Okay, look at what you're eating. We're wanting to make sure we keep our gut microbiome healthy. So pre, pro, and postbiotics. I've done a couple of podcasts on exactly that topic. So go back and check those ones out. Next one is to build strong social connections. So get engaged. Like me going to ukulele, me hanging around with the surf girls. And it's only one day a week, but doing that one day a week absolutely helps. It carries me for days. There's so much goodness in it for my mind. So we're wanting to do that. So think about what you've been wanting to learn or study or do, that you can do it within an environment where there's other people around. Obviously, if you're experiencing chronic loneliness and need to seek professional help, do that. I'm not discounting any of that. You need to do that. Get the support that you need. And there's lots of self-help groups out there. However, be proactive. Be proactive in what you're doing day in, day out. It's worth it. And we know, again, statistically, as we age and maybe one partner dies or something like that, people become more isolated anyway. Bring actions into your life today that will help feed you as you get older, the emotional security that we need to help prevent things like loneliness. We can't take this for granted. There's scary statistics. 1 in 5 men, 1 in 6 women are experiencing loneliness. And like I said, they're the numbers that just come forward. So I am certain that those numbers are a lot higher than what they really are. I don't want you to become one of those statistics. Be proactive. Look at your eating and look at what you are actively doing to stay engaged in the community. See ya.